It doesn't work right now.
Danny Hammond, I believe, that.
I agree with the same way you're saying, but I think a lot of that's just a little bit of the people in the central dispatch. I think they need a little more training. I think a lot of that problem. What I don't understand is how can the sheriff pick cities on who he's going to help and who he's not? I don't, he caters to help him, I guess, with this thing. And now he's calling with him running out payment dispatch. But he's got a problem with the variable reinforced. I'm not understanding. Anybody's got any answer? I'm just curious.
Whatever we do, I think we need to do a long-term solution. If we're looking simply to take money out of the sales tax and give it to Eureka Springs, then it needs to be looked at as more than just a temporary fix. In a year and a half, we have another election for another sheriff, and perhaps it may change, and there may be a different take on what central dispatch means. My goal would be to come up with, and with Devin's help, to come up with something, and I know it's problematic to define central dispatch, but I think we can. And I think we need to establish exactly what central dispatch means. Since this came up earlier this spring, I've gone on and looked at counties around the country. You know, it's not a unique thing to Carroll County that there's a dispute or a discussion as to what central dispatch. And by and large, central dispatch was created because it wasn't economically efficient to have a police dispatch separate from a 911 dispatch. That the only way that it could work and function well with the available funds, since it's all taxpayer money, would be to combine those services and make it more efficient going at the whole county rather than having a hodgepodge of spots where different dispatchers are working and often in conflict, which would, in my thinking, would be detrimental to the health and safety of the people in the community. So this is a great thing that Ron did in putting together. I'm not sure that is the ultimate solution, and I think we need to work on this before the next meeting. I think it needs to be worked on in the next 4 weeks.
Larry?
I think this Quorum Court needs to ask the sheriff, do you want to get in and do central dispatch like it needs to be done, or do you want Eureka Springs Police Department to dispatch your deputies, because we're not going to fund 2 dispatches?
Okay.
That's a good point, and I agree with Larry, except the fact is, like the gentleman said back there, I'm fire chief, that's not paying guards. And we have 3 terminals up here. There's no reason why a dispatch can't take care of Bailey making a traffic stop and me responding to a medical call and Green Force going to fire. You've got 3. The problem is, like somebody else spoke up back there, it's a lot involving training. And I'm going to firmly vote, either we do 1 or 2 things. We either give central dispatch an option, clean your house, do the job right, or we're going to move everything to Eureka Springs, because Eureka Springs dispatched my department for many, many years with no problems. So that's what I say, either one or the other.
Chuck Olson, I with Grassy Mountain Fire Department, first responders, and also I was a reserve deputy sheriff in Faulkner County for years, so I've worked with dispatch a lot. A couple different things. Number one, when I first heard this subject come up at a meeting a couple of months ago, it sounded like there was one thing only really involved, and that was money. Okay, sheriff says you can't do this, you can't do that because it doesn't have the budget. Okay, so that's you gentlemen right there. You control the purse strings, right? You need to decide, I guess, what you want to spend, what you don't want to spend. Number 2, you do need a central dispatch. I'm not sure if Eureka Springs should be designated as your central dispatch. That obviously you can do, or we'll leave it the way it is. When it was on the ballot, it was for a central dispatch, and Eureka Springs opted out of that. Is not that correct? Right. So they could have been part of it. So right, you can't fund 2. You got to fund 1. You got to fund 1, and you got to make sure it's doing everything that a central dispatch should do. Now, that's like Devin said. What is that? I mean, well, there's a lot of central dispatches around the state, so maybe you can get an omnibus type of description, but or just say anything that the dispatch does it should do. But you need a central dispatch, and it should be a good one. If you need more money to do it right, that's what it'll take.
Larry?
I believe this Quorum Court has the authority to set what we want our 911 dispatch to be. And if somebody wants to challenge it, they can challenge it, but I believe we're dispatching, or not dispatching, we're dispersing the funds for it. The funds for the dispatch come through this table. And I think if we dispense the funds for it, that we can set what the central 911 dispatch should be.
Wrong.
I agree with Larry, and I think that this is serious enough and urgent enough that we need to do more study. Now, either we need to have more meetings, or we need to have a group that sits down and determines what we can do. They've got to work with Devin, and she's got to do some research. I know Lamont's a good researcher too, and we need to figure out what we can do and how to do it, and then tell the sheriff, either you do it, or we're going somewhere else to do it. We have to get the services, we have to maintain the health and safety of our county, and dispatch is very involved in all of that. So I'd propose that rather than all of us meeting all the time to do this, that Judge form a committee today, Lamont and Galen and anyone else who wants to be on there.
I think the cities...
It can't have non-JPs on it. Our JP committees can only be JPs. You can't have people who are not JPs. You can consult with the cities, and they certainly need to be consulted with. But it needs to be a committee of 3 or 4 JPs that can study the issue and come back to us. Maybe we need to have a special meeting before the next one. Devin needs to be involved and give us some legal opinions. And we need to get a committee formed to figure out what to do with this. This is an urgent issue that needs to be addressed. I know that Eureka has volunteered to do this for some money, but we've got to come up with a long-term solution, not just something to pick up the immediate problem. And
Joe?
We're not the only county in the state. Why couldn't we check with them, see what they do? You know.
Mayor?
If the sheriff could put down what services he provides for his deputies, that's the definition of central dispatch. It's all be the same for everybody.
Who was next? Can I have a little voice in this? I'm not supposed to speak. I'm not an attorney. I'm not trying to be smart at it. I like to get along with people. But I've read the law on that, inside and out, till it's sour in my stomach. I can't find anywhere in county records where 911 was ever given to the sheriff. It's not documented nowhere. I read the law book right, it belongs to the county judge. I'm not one to ripple waves, but I get lots of complaints from people not happy with it. Send me your complaint on paper and I'll see what I can do. I've never got one of them. Everybody wants me to stick my neck in the noose and then hide in the back room. I think the only thing the sheriff has responsibility of in 911 dispatch is over ACIC. I'm not an attorney, but I think I'm right. I've read it till I've been blue in the face. I think the only honorable way to do it is you ought to study it, and if I'm right, I think myself and the Quorum Court should go visit with the sheriff personally and tell him our problems and how we would like to solve things. Do it in a respectful manner, and then if that don't work, do whatever we have to do. But I think the only thing he has to be in concurrence to give up is ACIC, and I don't think he'll do that. If he will, I'll be happy to take it and do the best I can with it, with all you people will help me. I didn't take the pledge to protect and serve, but I believe in protecting and serve. I served our military, and I'm here to help you all in anything I can do. I don't wanna call it fuss with nobody. But if y'all back me and help me, if he'll turn over ACIC to one of you deputies, we'll take it and we'll run it and we'll satisfy the people of Carroll County. That's all I have to say.
Don?
I agree with you, Sam, a lot, and that'd be a good idea. That might be the solution. And I'm really disappointed the sheriff's not here today to answer questions and tell us what's going on in the sheriff's office or somebody, because I don't understand what's going on and why this different attitude changing. And of course, you know, you always see on the news about 911 calls all across the nation being mishandled, and so that's one of the problems. Of course, we need good training, but I don't understand. I think we need to have that meeting with the sheriff, like you say, and tell him that we all agree that we need him to do his job, basically.
I don't want the job, but according to the law book, I think it's mine. But I will take it and I will work it very professionally and make it as good a 911 system as you are in the state if you will back me up.
Just in that line, I believe that 911 is yours, but I think central dispatch is the sheriff's. And
I think it has to be in concurrence with it.
I
think me and him together has to be in concurrence on that.
Right, and I think we probably need to...
Where are you getting the difference between 911 and central dispatch? It's the same entity. It's the same entity. Why do we separate it?
I'm just saying, I think the law separates the two.
What law?
The state law.
I can't do ACIC. I'm not authorized.
But what I'm saying is that we need to solve this problem, and whether it's the way Sam says, or whether the sheriff says he can do it, we need to have a group go to the sheriff and talk about it. It's unfortunate he's not here for this. We need to figure out a way to solve this for the good of the county. It needs to be solved one way or another. I think Devin needs to do her research and tell us what the law is, what are the rights and obligations of the sheriff and the Quorum Court and the judge are in this thing, because I don't know.
Larry?
Do you think that when people voted for the ballot title, in their mind, that they thought they were voting for everything, not as separated 911?
That's right.
But that they were voting for everything?
I agree.
I think that's the way the ballot title led people to believe. That's what I believe.
That's right.
I never had heard any difference in it until certain times when it was convenient for the sheriff wanting a way out on something or other to try to separate them, but that's the way I read the ballot title, and I think that's the way that most of the people that voted for it did read it.
Well,
John?
Can we set up a special committee to work with the sheriff to come up with a proposed solution to present to the court?
Yeah.
What I've been trying to say is I think we should go forward with Mr. Flakes. If we get the final figures, start going forward with this, because, like I said, we are on a time crunch, and this is a temporary solution, so we need to start going forward with this ordinance. My recommendation is not a committee of JPs, or you can read our advisory board, where you get the mayors, you get the police chiefs, you get the fire chiefs, and you get them together, and you can have a member of the JP, but you get them together along with you to sit down and figure a long-term solution where you can have a defined, and then present it as an ordinance, like what Mr. Reeves is recommending. And the sheriff can be there, and that board, and because it's obviously the sheriff is going to disagree with what the city is going to do, and the city's going to do, so you have an advisory board to sit down and meet and establish everything, like Mr. McKinney says, what are you going to offer your deputies? Have him listed, put it in the ordinance, and there we go.
Larry?
I'd like to make a motion. Do like the judge talked about, him pick a couple, 3 guys, sit down with the sheriff first. See, so what's going, any box to it, let's go over there and deal.
Matt?
If you're in charge of the central dispatch announcement, right?
I've never had an attorney that totally
Okay, but
defined
just say
it.
you are. And then can't we just put the sheriff where he's in charge of his deputies and get our own guy to run that? Then that way, there's no confusion with the sheriff.
I think if I read the law book right, it's between the sheriff and the county judge. The ACIC and central dispatch and also where it's located, I believe, right? Is that right, Devin?
I haven't looked at that part in a while. The county judge has control over 911. I think the sheriff has control.
You all budgeted, and I think you have very limited power what you can do.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, I think we need to get some research and find out exactly who has what power. And we looked at this before. It is quite confusing between the judge and the sheriff on who controls what parts of 911 central dispatch. We have a unified system, so they both control parts of the same thing. And instead of getting in a push-pull contest between the judge and the sheriff, our power is over the money. So we've got to figure out a way that we can resolve this financially rather than get in lawsuits and we've got another lawsuit if we don't properly use the jail tax money. We could have an illegal exaction suit on that, so we need to be very careful what we do and how we spend that money. And I'd like to ask Devin to research for us and come up with an opinion on what we can do as far as defunding or refunding, changing the funding on central dispatch. Can we go and have Eureka do it, pay them to do it? And what does that do to our central dispatch that we have here? And we just need to know how to do this. I don't know, and the sheriff's not here, so we can't discuss it with him. He needs to be part of this.
Yes, it does.
He certainly has a role in it. I had hoped he'd be here today, but I think the idea of Sam and a committee of 3 or 4 JPs going to see the sheriff and talking about this and working it out and keeping it non-political, try to make it for the purpose of solving a big problem we got in this county right now. We can't have a dispatch system where the officers on the road don't get all the information that's available about people they're stopping. We've got to have a central dispatch that is truly central and provides all the information. So I'd suggest we do something like that.
Lamont?
One practical point about wanting to meet with the sheriff, if there are more than one JP, there has to be public notice to the news media. So basically, it's a public meeting. So if we're going to meet with the sheriff, it may as well be in an open meeting here, where everybody who wants to attend and participate can do it. We can call it a special meeting if necessary, for that sole purpose.
What I was fixing to say, the very first thing that needs to be done is 2 days after the sheriff is home from vacation, there needs to be a special meeting. And you know, over the years, I've been slow on special meetings and paid what it costs. But there needs to be a special meeting, and this needs to be brought to head. I agree to that.
If you agree to give it up, if you all will do ACIC's help. How to do it with the money we got now, where's that?
We have to make a motion on that?
I'd like to cover one more point, real quickly. Rhonda here, he was talking about, it would be fairly simple, we were talking about that, to be switching over radio communication to the deputies and stuff in the Richard Springs. But to switch 911, like Larry talked, we can't fund 2 places, you know. If you're gonna switch 911, which I have no problem with that, it's a lot of time involved and expensive on the trunk lines, getting them back to Richard Springs where it used to be, for the rest of the side of the county. You know, like I said, it used to be that way. And they moved everybody together as a central district. But this would be very easy to do. But changing 911 is gonna take a little more time, a little more money, and a little more work. And I don't,
I could throw my 2 cents in. After sitting here, I think the cleanest option is going to be what Galen and Lamont were talking about, is to set up an ordinance outlining what dispatch is and tying the money to that. That way, if the service isn't provided, we have recourse to go and act. Because that does say a central dispatch office. If you start splitting them up and funding more than one, you're potentially opening up liability there. We've got an office, it's fully functional. The service just needs to be provided in the way that it's always been provided.
That's why we need to meet.
John?
I think we should combine what Evan just said, that we need to prepare the paperwork and then have a special meeting to act on the paperwork.
Mayor?
It sounds like you all did. I think the sheriff in his letter said October 1st was when he was gonna start. And I just asked that y'all to move as quickly as possible, because I don't want one day to be our officers out there without that.
Yes, sir.
I think that's doable. Whatever we do can be done with an emergency clause, because this certainly does affect public safety, health, and welfare. So there's plenty of time to do that. But it needs to be, we can't put it off. It needs to be started immediately, because that time is going to fly by very quickly.
I think if we have a special meeting, I think we need to send invitations to the mayors of all the cities and the police departments, fire chiefs, so they can have their input also.
I think we need to know what the law actually is, who's actually in charge of it. If there's any way we can change anything, but have everything in place before we have this meeting. But you can pass the ordinance to move something, you don't have the power to do it, you don't do it.
Sam, do you want to go ahead and get your committee started on that? Figure out that part about it, what the law really is, with Devin's help?
I've done 4.5 years to find it, and the attorney explained to me what that means. I ain't got it yet. But we like to find it helpful.
No, sir. Devin did.
I didn't hear that. I don't know when he's supposed to be back or whatever.
He's supposed to be back, I think, this week.
I think if we go forward with the ordinance establishing what it is, we don't need to worry about using control of the...
Sam?
Yeah.
I think that we have to be very careful. I think there's a lot of gray area over who's in charge of what in this, and we can't just jump in and try to do it. We need some legal opinions, and we need to do some research and studying and communicating before we jump into doing anything. I think the meeting with the sheriff's a good idea. I think we should have a committee of JPs to work on this, so we don't have to have full meetings and pay everybody to come to a meeting. If we have a committee that does it, they do it without pay, they can meet with the sheriff, they can meet with the judge, they can all meet together, they can meet with whoever they want, with the attorneys, and figure out a way to come up with this, and then present it to us as a body, so we can act. We can have some background and research and act on it, but Kevin has to do some work first, I think, before we do anything, and I think we need to fairly rapidly have a meeting of, if we have a whole Quorum Court, everybody has to get paid. So either that, or appoint a committee and have a committee meeting with the sheriff there and the judge, so we can talk about this.
Can we move on to JP comments, non-agenda items?
Well, I think we have a resolve.
Yeah, don't we need to figure out what we're gonna do?
What we're gonna do. You need to get a meeting or a second meeting. I would suggest, maybe my comment too.
Let me ask Devin, could you prepare an ordinance to define what the central dispatch is?
Sure.
We don't have to have a committee, you could just go ahead and write up a proposed ordinance, then we could have a special meeting to act on that ordinance. Does that make sense?
I can prepare an ordinance. I don't even know that you necessarily need a special meeting. I mean, if we've got till October, but I'll leave that to y'all.
Well, I think we need to do this fairly quickly. We don't have until October. It takes a while to set these things up, but I think that the law on this is fairly confusing and difficult to understand, and so if you're going to prepare a special ordinance, I think you're going to have to do a memo with it to explain what the law is, so we can understand what we're doing. Because as Sam said, there's a lot of confusion between the judge's role and the sheriff's role in in dispatch and 911, and we have a combined system, so they're both involved in it. And everything I've looked at is pretty confusing. I think we have the possibility of switching over. Eureka Springs apparently has the ability to provide us the dispatch service, but we've got to have a plan and figure out how we're going to fund it. We can't have a county dispatch and Eureka Springs dispatch, and it just doesn't work. We need one unified, centralized system for this county and somebody in charge of it. And so we need to know what we're doing legally and practically.
And one last comment from me on this is whether it goes to Eureka, stays here, or goes somewhere else, it still has to be defined what it is. So regardless of what we do, if we did a contract with Eureka, it would have to be defined. So why can't we use that same contract and do it countywide? Let's define, it was a shortcoming that it wasn't defined years ago when the jail tax was proposed. It was, a lot of anecdotal evidence that he said, she said, meeting minutes and whatever, but nothing was put into writing to firmly define what central dispatch means. Now we have an opportunity to do that, and I think that we need to look at what the law requires in terms of who is control of what their responsibilities are, and define that in writing. So we have something that everybody can go to and look at, and we don't have to refer back to memories.
John, I would make a motion that we charge Devin with writing a proposed ordinance outlining what was just said. And that you provide a copy of that proposed ordinance to all the JPs and to the sheriff and chief of police prior to the next one.
Sure.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I'm not sure you're legal, but it passed. Any JP's comment? None agenda.
Yes, I have, you're aware that the airport has got approval for a $300,000 grant to build 8 hangars. In order to get the construction going, they will need Quorum Court approval to get a construction loan. Now, this doesn't mean that they're going to pay for it, but they have to have the loan approval, and I think you have to make at least a payment before the $300,000 grant comes to the airport. That's what we're at, what we will be asking, just like we did on the terminal. We've been awarded the grant. It's just a matter of cash flow. We don't have the $300,000, and we have to pay the bills and then submit them before we can be reimbursed. So we're looking at requesting a construction loan, which we will draw periodically for approximately 90 to 120 days, and pay the bills, submit the invoices, and get the money back from the state. So they'll have a resolution at the next Quorum Court meeting. This is.
Can I make a comment on that? Last time we did that, the note came due, we thought we'd have the money back in 30 to 90 days. The note came due, we didn't have the money back. Didn't have time to ask you all if you wanted to redo it, keeping the name in good faith. I renewed it. I would like to have more time on it if you all want to approve it. Be sure that it's paid up. It ain't cost any more to get you a year note on it than it is 3 months, and then you know you got the money.
But the money, the grant has been approved.
I understand that. It was last time too, but the money didn't get back in time to pay it off in the time if we asked to borrow the note.
So you're just saying, make the note for a year rather than 3 months.
Well, or 6 months or something, either that or you need to come back to the Quorum Court before it comes due and ask for an extension of it.
Well, we haven't started the project yet.
Last time I didn't have time, and I was out of order, I signed it, keep it in good faith. But I should have had approved from you, I'm just trying to keep us on.
Yeah, yes, but this is just to put you on notice, because it was discussed in a meeting yesterday, our commission meeting, and we don't want anybody to be surprised.
Quorum Court don't have a problem, I don't, that's the only problem I have, just ask for a little more time you think you need.
That's a good suggestion.
Any more JP comments? Can somebody move to adjourn, thanks. We're waiting for the judge. I just want to get the right You all know, you can take copies of last time you was here, you passed that we formed some committees, and you told me to do that. I've been to everybody voted for it, I've done everybody wanted, so I give everybody a piece of pie. Now I'm told some people are, I need to.
Can we ask them,
We're back in session, please.
We forgot something.
I think I can get with Devin and maybe amend this appointments legally. Oh, let's see. Public Water Committee. I appointed Ron Clay, Don McNeely, and Larry Swofford. Does any of y'all want to decline from that, if I can do that?
I do.
You have a reason why?
Well, I got beat up enough over it last time. But I'll work for somebody that if the water ever goes through, we'll be bidding on the water work. And so I think it just be better.
Would anyone else like to?
I'll serve on it.
John, okay. Also, I don't think it's compulsory that you all have to go to these meetings. I think at these meetings, you all discuss your items and bring it back to the full board. And also, I don't think just because it's 3 members longer, that's all that can go to these meetings.
Correct.
I think you can all go if you want to.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'll see if I can change that. Personnel Committee. Jack Deaton, Matt Phillips, and Joe Mills. Does anyone not want to serve on that?
I ain't probably gonna concern about them doing this, will slow me down for a while if there's no urgency, and I don't have no problem serving them as long as it's okay with you guys.
So if you want to stay on, you want
I'll stay on. Coaching for some other people.
Okay, County Facilities and Property Committee. We have Lamont Ritchie, John Reeves, and Galen Riggs. Does anyone object? You want to object to that committee? Oh, you're all good with that?
budget committee takes a lot of meetings, and maybe next year I could serve on that if I need be, but this year I just can't.
We got Jack Deaton and John Howard, would anyone else like to get appointed to that committee? Ron? Well, I think you all do good, I'm just trying to give everybody a piece of time.
Well, no, I appreciate that, but I don't
I'm
think
sure
I...
they know if everybody voted yes, they want to be on one.
You got the two new committees too now.
Yeah,
So I try to make that to give everybody.
Yeah, we got two new committees, same too.
Everybody.
Library and the finance committee, now I could probably serve on one of them, the budget committee is the one that gets to meet a lot, it takes a lot of time.
Library and finance.
What's all your finance?
Hey, Galen?
Put Larry on finance too. Larry can ask if he can.
Need one more. Library and finance committee.
Oh, there's two separate
That's two
committees.
separate
Yeah.
things.
Two separate, there's a finance committee and a library committee.
Which one we on that?
Finance.
Galen and Larry and you, Lamont, and library committee. Here's three yeses real quick. Matt, would you do it?
Yes, my daughter's involved in library system collected, so.
Anyone else? This is kind of volunteer.
She's free.
I'll be library.
Need one more yes. Joe, how about you?
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Hard school picture, perfect fit.
Very good. Okay, now. You get that, y'all leave me. Okay, we're attorney now.
We got
Stop that Friday.
Who
Who would like to second that?
We all did. One motion and 8 seconds.
Yeah, we need to start with something. Yes,
between now and then, I can do that.
On the watershed resolution, I'm
was 5 to 4. 5 to 4. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, yours wasn't the Slip Road Road. You're using our frequency, and we're paying FCC license for our remember that, and then Song and Rights, and you take a barrel shot, we take our frequencies back, that takes 40 radio.
That's right. Yes, sir. And I'm not allowed to say my wife.
Because we don't realize to do on the top ring of the county.
We gotta get this wrong. We can't.
Let's get this to Plato, because I'm not quite understanding, I do not want to tell you straight.
Done as quick as you can.
You betcha.
We'll try to get it out and get it but if you get it lined out, then you can, if he doesn't do it, then win. Somebody else will have to handle it. The judge will do it.
But right now, we don't have anything to propose to come up.
Well, we do that, we did, I said it, but you don't want to go there.
No, we don't want to end up.
No.
We've got a big problem with jail policy. If we end up in lawsuits, we gotta be very careful, we lose that. We lose that.
I don't want to be here. We didn't lose much, you know, right? That means it does not have to be here.
No,
We can do any,
we can get. Lawsuit on this.
oh, yeah,
And
they or we voters, right.
So we've got to do, we've got to work something out that.
Oh, yeah.
It works.
We need to talk to another video at some point, whether,
I'm so confused now. I'm gonna bring this up. I didn't take it how she's saying this, so I don't know if we've done something perfect. Right? I guess it's not what he thought to fetch the way you should have done
whatever you do while you're at it.
You know what I mean?
I know what you're.
Okay. I don't Some questions are on there, I'm not really, could we all be in the loop on it? This one is asking how it was voted on. I explained to him it was adopted by voting with 5 to 4. Yeah. But what was that second that second sentence you said has kind of got me.
He ended up being on that 911.
Yeah.
How it's seen as a way of avoiding issues, and you want to know if the resolution is opposition.
And I was not.
Yes, thanks.
No, I can't say lying, I was in Memphis.
And now you.
I was not here to I'm not at all.
Well, those were.
It passed by.
No blue. Y'all see me, aren't I?
Yeah.
Well, now you're adjourned, I'm sorry, I don't know if you told me informal, but you knew about that with Robert County, about it being all false, I'm sure I can tell website, all their web code.
Yeah, that's a young new reporter.
Great, you know, the memorandum, with direct links, all the .gov stuff on that. So if they're bad, no.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's.
Well, thank you for your help.
Thank you.
And it did, we have no leeway at this point, right?
Well, we have a resolution of closing,
Okay.
and we're gonna send it in, but it goes to the governor and all those people that are in there. She'll get it sent, and hopefully people are thinking about it.
It's like a sweet well.
Jamie, I'll be glad to help. I will hand deliver those letters to both
You're more than
to
welcome
make sure they get sent.
That's my job, I'm sorry, I appreciate it. Thank you, no, I was talking with Miss Ann.
Yeah, I-
Thank you, and I promise, so I will get the judge to sign it and get something in there. Thank you so much. On that, that, what, January 9th, so the bucket shed, when it was not erected in 2011. It didn't become an actual movie. But the thing is, right, all right, but the thing is, it's not an actual So why, I mean, otherwise it would be all for naught to begin with.
That's right. It's not.
Yeah, but in the papers, that's where it's defamatory statements, they said that it's a done deal in this article.
Yeah, but that's just a reporter's opinion.
All right, and I know you know.
Can I have a copy of that?
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
I haven't read this yet.
You want one too, I didn't get y'all, you know.
Stick one in.
And then y'all have a copy of this, right, from Carroll County News.
The one that was in the other day?
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
All right, it was
Yeah.
right on the front page, it's got your name and lights there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
Arkansas.
I had a look.
Quorum and Court, mind you.
It sure does.
I'm sorry, I was livid when I read that.
Thank you for helping me on that. I did not want to answer it
Yeah.
correctly. I don't
Thank
want
you
to.
so much.
Okay. You got it so far.
It ain't over yet.
No.
Are y'all gonna be having follow-up meetings on the shipping, or?
Well, we'll have, I don't know, we've got, there's a lot going on, we need to see kind of where we get.
I get that. Well, I'll keep my eyes and ears open. All right.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much. Okay. So that's in the reverse lookout. I just made me a note. And then we'll go to the sign. We need that.
Okay, so basically, this right here on our agenda, Ron, really, we didn't, you see, auditors, this should have never, I feel, been put down that way. I think we should have had it under miscellaneous where you're at there.
Well,
because my auditors look at that and they say, Jamie, where's that ordinance? Now, I have a draft, so I'm gonna have to do some talking to explain to them.
it was a draft to discuss.
Correct.
And it's business, it's not miscellaneous, it's an item of business to discuss. You
But
don't
we're
have to
not-
have strictly ordinances and resolutions there. You can
Your new
discuss other
business?
yeah.
So, but
You have a
feel
proposed
like-
ordinance, I gave you a proposed ordinance. Right?
I just had several calls, let me tell you, when they got the agenda. Jamie, I didn't get this, Jamie, I didn't get this.
Yeah.
I said, because I don't have it.
It's not,
So it didn't look good.
it wasn't prepared yet.
Right. And, that's great, but dang it, would you like me to bring out the ordinance that we passed? Near our Ferguson office stating we have to have everything in by 4:30 Wednesday afternoon.
No.
Do you want to amend
I
that?
understand, but we have to have the agenda set by Wednesday afternoon. We don't have to have all the paperwork.
Oh, it states in what we did, because it is too hard on me to have it all done and out to you all. You're not gonna start getting it on time if it continues like this. That's how it works.
Do you remember how it was before?
Matt, and I don't want it that way.
I'm the one that brought the
Yes,
ordinance.
and I
to
really
fix it,
appreciate it.
And to try to do that, but we have to have some flexibility. Now, I didn't make that.
Which is
That
good,
wasn't-
because that's when,
I didn't want to vote on that ordinance. That's why I just wanted the item on the agenda, because I couldn't write that quickly.
right, no. So that's why I'm glad that Mr. Newmaw, before he left, asked us to add in their approval for agenda. I don't think we should put anything on the agenda that we don't have in our packet. I think at Friday, when we come in that morning, is when we say approval agenda, like you did today.
Yeah.
I would like to move mine to here. That's when they approve it, and I'll put it in the minute.
Yeah.
So it's not on the agenda, and then the auditors are questioning it, Ron, because then they'll think I don't want to be sneaking or putting something
So we're
somewhere.
just guys who try to cause trouble. That's
Well,
their whole
we've
job, is
got,
to try to cause
we've
trouble.
got really good auditors, and my goal is, before I ever leave office, and I pray to retire that office, I want a perfect audit. And they're telling me, Jamie, that never happens. I tell them, I'll make it happen.
They're not gonna let it happen. If they let it happen, then they don't have a job.
You know, I know, but if I'm doing a good job.
They're not gonna tell you that auditors don't, they always
I
keep
don't
telling
get
you.
auditors, are you kidding me? One of them works here, so they don't. I wish our sheriff was here. I think they're following that.